that is important in my eyes. And first is their time. Dana, thank you so much for this precious quality that you have afforded us here at Threads of Enlightenment, that you're willing to spend some of that quality stuff with us. The other is your journey. I thank you so much. And it is my hope that I create a space by which we can create it's such a safe and restful space that you can feel at home and be able to share some of your journey, your pain, your strength, your defeats, all of it, so that we can gurgitate, eat, learn, and become better human spirits. Thank you so much, Dana, for coming to Threads of Enlightenment.
Thank you, Ken. I appreciate it.
I am excited about this. I want you to tell them all that you have created, those things that you have given birth to, and so that they can get a chance to know and see what you have created from your journey.
Oh, so just to put it in a little bit of context, I am a 25-year veteran educator. Right out of school, I became a teacher. My background's in special ed. But in about 2015, when, oh my God, I had probably been teaching about 20 years, I picked up a paintbrush for the first time in my adult life. And I had always been creative. When I was a kid, what do you want to be when you grow up? I wanted to be a veterinarian or an artist. And then that went out the window and I went and did adult things. But I picked up a paintbrush for the first time. And I always joke when I say by happenstance, because I don't have to finish that sentence, you understand. But I picked up this paintbrush and something that had lain dormant for decades had awoken in me. And I began to paint. And I painted every day. I had young children at the time. And I would come home from work, the soul-sucking job, right, that I'm pulling my eyelashes out on the way home and the drive home. And the very stressful job, the job that I think was a catalyst for my getting rheumatoid arthritis because of the amount of stress that was involved and other factors. And came home every night and painted, and it was every day. And I would come home, put the kids, feed the kids, put them to bed, put the sheet on the dining room table and paint. And I'd go to work. I had a beautiful office and I had paintings all over my walls and I would give them to people. I was like Oprah. I was like, you get a painting and you get a painting. And it was like, that's what I needed to do. And just to give you an idea of how this progressed, within about 6 months, I found my voice. I wasn't just copying things on the internet. I started painting these paintings of mothers and children together, and then independent women, and I really had my own style. And then somebody wanted to pay me to do a painting, and I was like, you could do this. So then I started doing art festivals. Fast forward, that was January 2015. By June 2017, or we'll say August, I walked into my principal's office, when we were getting ready to start school. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this when I know I can do that. I have to follow what's in my heart. And it was a risk for sure. We lived and I was making six figures because I was in administration. Like I've been doing what I was doing. I had a career in what I was doing. And we lived in a beautiful little house by the beach in Fort Lauderdale. And I drove a, fancy car, and my husband, who was amazing, and I had young children, like I had to be able to support them. And my husband said, if you really want to follow what's in your heart, he's like, we have to move. We have to sell the house, buy a less expensive house. He's like, you can't drive your fancy car anymore because it's not completely paid for. And without hesitation, I handed him the keys to the car. We put the house on the market, and within 6 months, we were living in out in, like, I always say the woods, but in a rural area, drove a car that I could afford and quit my job. And my husband said, and we put a shed on the property, like a large shed. My husband mapped it out. He put electricity in it. He put insulation in the walls, an air conditioner unit, floors, the whole deal. And for 2 years, I painted my little heart out until I figured out how I was going to make a living doing this. And then again, fast forward by 2 years later, my intuition, my sense of spirituality began to take its own road, because, as you
Mm-hmm.
know, when you nurture your creative spirit,
Yeah.
right, your heart and your connection to the universal energy of love, whatever you want to call it God, call it source, call it whatever it is, you become more connected to that, and your gifts
Yeah.
develop and grow. So I found
Yes.
myself, because I took this leap of faith on
Mm-hmm.
this spiritual journey to who knew where the hell it was going, but I was following it because I
Yeah.
felt it in my soul. I felt it in my heart, and my husband knew enough to support me in the process. So I wound up in a gallery. I wound up owning my own gallery, but it was
Mm-hmm.
is an art gallery and intuitive lounge, because I
Mm-hmm.
understood that these creative
Yes.
spirits grow in tandem.
Yes.
So now I have this gallery called Ubuntu Fish Gallery,
Mm-hmm.
and we could talk more about that. But just again to fast forward, because I could go on and on and on about the creativity and how wonderful it is. But I wound up shifting from the painting, because I couldn't stop painting. It was
Yeah.
flowing through me. It was flowing, coming out of me. And now I have this gallery, but now I write books. Like, my
Mm-hmm.
creativity shifted to writing. And even though I'm
Yeah.
still a visual artist, now I write.
Yeah.
And I just wrote a book called 10 Recommandments for Personal Empowerment, about
Mm-hmm.
how I, you know, created this beautiful life for myself from what I refer to as a dumpster fire of my youth. You said we're all traumatized, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And this follow-up book, which I'm in the process of editing right now, that is going to probably be released in right around Christmas, New Year's, like in the next few months.
Very good.
It's called Beyond the 10, Decoding the Woo Woo. And that
Mm-hmm.
chronicles my spiritual journey, and how all these terms and all these concepts are thrown around, but people who don't understand what it's like to have lived in it
Yeah.
um, truly could be a little put off by it. So
Yes.
I talk about what my journey looked like, how I took the risk, how I handed
Mm-hmm.
over the keys, how I quit the job, how I wound up following my bliss, and now I'm living this magical life that I exist in right now. I hope that wasn't too much, but there's so
No, that is
much.
that is your story, and you capsule it. But we're going to break it down into pieces. But that's it. That is all that it is in life. It's going beyond the programming. As I said, we are programmed to come out of school, get your degree, get into corporate America, go get the whites, and then you're going to be there. You're going to be happy ever after. And once you get there, you realize that no, I'm not happy ever after there. And then you're looking, where do I go? Where do I go? And then you have to learn to see and be alert to know the inside of you is beginning to speak. And we'll talk about all of that. And you had mentioned on the onset, when you said we are all, I believe that the principles that we discover on our journey is all the same. It's universal. But the beautiful part of it is that we go through that journey and we have an individual revelation of that journey through our gift. And that makes it so much beautiful, because you then get to see this central picture, which is houses all the wisdoms and the principles, but you get the flavor through someone that is an artist, someone that is a singer, someone that is a teacher, someone that is from all of these backgrounds, and they bring this beauty to this picture of those principles, and life gets really, really tasteful. And that is why I believe that every single human being on this planet have a part to play, if they would allow themselves to be a part in that play that is out there, through personal growth and development. Dana, take us back when you were born. Mom and dad kissed you. Mm-mm-mm. They brought you home from the hospital and put you in this beautiful room, and you have begun living. And they now are going to deposit into you the wisdom and what they have accumulated through their life, based on their drama, how they see the world, their trauma, how they perceive the world. Now they're going to teach you. How was your family life? How was your upbringing?
Okay. So again, for the sake of time and for the economy of words, I'm obviously going to give you the high points, but I will tell you that in the first book, in 10 Recs, 10 Recommandments, the cool kids would call it 10 Recs, but what I do is it's a loose autobiography of again, my experiences and then what I gleaned from these experiences. And then because I'm a teacher, it meets the how-to, like how you can do the same. So even though I'm going to gloss over this, the real juicy stuff is in the book. But my mother and father, they were, I come from an Italian background. My father, I'm from I'm from Jersey. My parents are from North Jersey. And my father worked in the city in New York. And he was young, he was smart, he was a hot shot exec. And my mother was just stunning. And she, charming and charismatic and all that, but she had really, really low self-esteem. So my mother had low self-esteem. She had abandonment issues, but on the outside, she was perfect. My father followed all the rules, right? Went to the right school and he got the right degrees and he got the right job and he had the house in the suburbs and he had the beautiful wife and he had the son and the daughter and the house on the lake and the whole deal. So they were following all the rules, but they were both very, very damaged. They had their own trauma. As a child, obviously, I don't know this, but they have their own trauma. And so my mother, her go-to in her coping was to be cold and aloof. So she not only had her own abandonment issues, but she created abandonment issues. My father, I always joke, would flip a table in an instant, right? You know what I mean? Like he had difficulty regulating his anger. So it was just a disaster. My brother, who is a few years older than me, firstborn Italian son, he was the princeling, and I was, as you could probably tell in the first 12 minutes of this conversation, I had a big mouth, and I was a highly sensitive child, and so I not only was aware of this because of my own sensitivity and understanding, but because I'm mouthy, I wasn't afraid to shine the spotlight on all the dysfunction. So it was a tumultuous, experience at best. And by 14 years old, by 12 years old, forgive me, my parents got divorced. And it was ugly. It was ugly. Yeah. And my brother and I lived with my mother in the very beginning, but we were killing each other because we went from like a draconian sort of very a structured and with strong discipline with my father, and everybody was afraid, to my father leaves, and my mother was just like, do what you want. 12-year-old and a 16-year-old in the house doing what we want, and I'm getting my ass kicked on the daily for my brother because he doesn't really know how to cope either. Fast forward, and I'll be brief. My mother asks my father, because they're kind of, interacting, asks my father to come and restore order while she goes away for a weekend and gets her head on straight. So I am now 13. So she could get her head on straight. And she never returned. Wow. Now, the story of my mother is your father came in lock, stock, and bag and told me if I returned, he would kill me. Wow. My father's story is your mother left for another man. So there's truth in both of these stories, for sure. Yeah. But as a child, all I know is my mother left, she never came back, and now I'm with this crazy man. And I probably lasted another 6 months or so. My brother's driving at this point, so he's off doing his thing. My father and I'm an adolescent, so we know that didn't go well, right? Like I sucked. So finally, again, yada, yada, yada. Long story short, I had a final blowout with my father the summer I turned 14, the summer before I went into my freshman year in high school. He took my dog to the pound as a disciplinary action, and I ran away. And that day, and we've had fights that even became physical at times, that I would just pick up and run away, and he would he would chase me and bring me home, and it was always a thing. And this time I walked out the door and I never came back. And And what happened after that, again, is complicated. My mother got
Yeah.
involved in all of these things.
Yeah.
But that was the beginning of my adulthood, essentially.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
And yeah, so as an adult, I could look back and say, my father, he was going through the toughest time of his life. He just left his job in New York, probably because he couldn't regulate his own anger. He just split up with his wife. He's now got these 2 teenagers, and one of them is difficult. It's just difficult. And he didn't know how to behave. The 14-year-old version of me was like, oh, I can't trust the adults in my life. Oh, I'm garbage. I'll be treated as such. Oh, if I wasn't so fill in the blank, my parents might still be together, or all of that. And so what it does is, and this, it creates a belief system within you. And then you develop patterns in your life based on that belief system. And you bump into others that you align with along the way until you have the realizations that it's all irrational. It's all a part of your environment. You're responsible to shift your own beliefs, your own patterns and actions, and create the life that you'd like to live.
Dana, you just spoke power in those last few statements. Is we attract the energy that we are comfortable with.
Yes.
And if you're comfortable with someone that is abuser, you are going to pull that energy because you're comfortable with it, and you recognize it. There is a form of security there, so you're going to pull that, and that's why we end up with men and women that are similar from where we come from. But like you said, at some point we have the opportunity to make the decision, wait a minute, I need to take responsibility for myself. I need to become an individual. And how old were you, Dana, when I know you left home, your mom were in and out, and then you mentioned a few things there. How old were you when you made that decision that, hey, I need to become an individual, apart from your mom and dad, even though you're here, but you, when you needed to be you? Because you mentioned that you came out of high school and then you went to college. But how old were you when you said, I need to be me?
40? No, people talk about, awakening and evolution, and the dark night of the soul, right?
Yes.
And I feel like with that whole dark night of the soul, if we just get rid of that terminology and say, sometimes when things get bad enough, that's when you decide to change them. But until you understand that you have the ability to change it, they don't change. So I go off to college with this sort of, dysfunctional way of looking at myself and the world around me.
Yeah.
But yet, I'm following the rules. Sure, I go to college, I get the job, I do my thing. But like internally, I still feel like the victim. I still feel, I would never, ever have called myself a victim. I would always have called myself a powerhouse. I overcome obstacles. I'm a bit of a badass. I'm from Jersey. Don't you know this? Like I always kind of had that persona, but I couldn't figure out why I couldn't have the beautiful relationship that my friends had. And all my friends in my 20s were getting married, and why not me? And why are they meeting great guys? And I'm meeting guys that are abusive, neglectful, right? Don't see me, don't get me. Like, what is it? I'm great. What am I doing wrong here, right? Like that was always my perspective. So to answer your question, it was a bit of an evolution for me because I went through my entire 30s. Like in your 20s, when you're a little bit dysfunctional, everybody's trying to figure it out. So you don't really notice. Like you're in college and we're all idiots, right?
Yeah.
No offense, but we're all idiots. But then we start to really mature and then start to get married and start to have children of our own, right? And when I was in my 30s, I'm watching all of my normal friends do that. And I can't figure out why, like, this is so elusive for me. So in 30s, it was jerk after jerk after jerk, if I may say so. I shouldn't say that. It was basically the jerk that I was aligned with, the jerk that I was aligned with, the jerk that I was aligned with, all of those years. And then with every one of those, I learned a little something about myself. Oh, I said I wanted this, because it's amazing when you declare you want something, somehow the universe conspires to bring it to you, right? But there's always a lesson in it if you're really still needing to work on something in yourself. So with every little, I say relationship, I never had a relationship in my 30s that went on more than a year, right? So
Encounters, I call them, every encounter.
Encounter. You're much more polite than I am, so we'll call them encounters. So every encounter that I had just showed me something else, and so you learn, so it's not like an overnight where I changed my belief system. It was like a molding, right? But at the same time, it was getting progressively worse, because what I've learned in hindsight, of course, because that's beautiful field of vision
always.
What I learned was, when we have imbalances in ourselves that we need to reconcile, the way the learning experiences are presented to us is it could be like a tap on the shoulder, like, hey, oh, okay. Or if you ignore that, then it's like a punch in the arm. If you ignore that, smack in the head. And then I'm like, then you get a good old wind up in the, in the private parts until you're really forced to listen. So it was just getting worse and worse and worse. And I was becoming more hopeless and more so in despair. And then finally, I made a shift in my late 30s. And here's the answering your question. In my late 30s, I had a shift. I wound up selling my apartment or my condo that I lived in, and I wound up buying a house because I had a Shih Tzu. Her name was Mia. She's no longer with us, but I had a Shih Tzu who I had bought because I was so lonely and used to sneak into my condo because I wasn't allowed to have dogs. And after about a year, I got caught and I started getting the dreaded condo letters. And instead of giving up the dog because she meant so much to me, because it was really the first love, kind of unconditional love that I had, right? I wound up selling my condo. It was in the 2008, so it was right before the market went to hell. So I made some money on my condo and I bought this house so I could keep my dog. So I showed a dedication to myself and to something that I loved. And somehow, without my realizing it, my energy started to shift. Then I met my daughters shortly after that, because now I'm domesticated. Right now I'm at home and I'm focusing on, curtains and paint in the yard and the landscaping. And somehow, without realizing, my energy shifted. And my daughters' birth father, I say birth father because my husband has since adopted them. That's a story for another day. But he stepped in, and I wound up within a course of 2 years having these two children back to back. But the moment I gave birth to my first daughter, something changed, because I understood unconditional love for the first time. And in that moment, I saw my mother for what she really was. I had the blinders on. I didn't know. I understood where I was neglected and where I was abused, because now I saw love through the lens of motherhood. And that's really, so I joked at 40, but I had my children at 38 and 39. So truly, not until I was 40 did I truly get it. Not completely, because now I'm 50. Well, I'm 51. Don't tell anybody. It's between us.
It is a beautiful story, though. It takes an event, and I tell people, you mentioned about the tap, the punch, and all that stuff, and that's what I tell people. We don't live in a state of awareness, and until you live in a state of awareness, you're not going to notice those things, those taps, those punch, until something I mentioned on the onset of our conversation, what I call the visitation, meaning that something is going to come into your life that is going to put a stop to all of this madness going on. And at that juncture, you have an opportunity to see things. And when you begin to see things, you're not looking at, you're seeing it differently. You're seeing things with an understanding, a deeper understanding of
Yeah.
whatever that situation is. Is it a different understanding of your relationship with your parents, a different understanding of a relationship with you? It begins to change you. And what a beautiful gift that you got, where it was your child that offered that revelation to you, so that you can begin to look at your mom, see who she is, look at you, see who you are,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and then making the decisions necessary to change. And my mom used to say, change is not change until you change.
Yeah. Well, the work, the work, there's one thing to have the revelation, but to not do
Yeah.
anything about it,
Yes.
then you're stuck.
You're stuck. And I say this to people. I can pinpoint a person why they're stuck,
Mm-hmm.
because they haven't made their statement of faith yet. And the statement of faith that I tell them is something that you believe more than anything. You said it earlier. When we speak things, we lose the power of that energy out. And it comes from the belief system. And when we release it, it happens because we actually truly believe it. And I say when someone when they're stuck, is because they're uncertain. They don't know where to go. They haven't found what they believe in yet. Because once you find it, Dana, you usually speak it, and then you actually take the corresponding actions to bring it to pass. It is something that is what happens with the mind and the spirit, and it connects. And before people know it, they start doing what they said they would do, if they believe it, if it's their statement of faith. If it's not, if it's just a wish, they'll say it quickly and it drops on the floor and it has no
Yeah.
fruit. But when you say it from your inside, you'd be amazed how you pull all those people, like you said, those guys were coming out of nowhere, and you were having all of these encounters, as we said earlier. So here you are, you have your beautiful daughter, the first one began to wake you up, and you began to see. And now you are going to put in the work, because it demands work, Dana. It
Yes. Oh my God. The
demands
work
work.
started then. That's when the work
Yes.
started.
So talk to me about some of that work, because we have to get on this journey to learn how to accept ourselves, how to start forgiving people, forgiving ourselves, forgiving.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a big, beautiful beginning. Talk to us as to how you began to formulate your plan, recognize it first of all, and then formulate your plan to make it happen.
Okay. Oh, so, it's funny when people talk about the work, there's
Yes.
a lot of, I just want to comment on something that you said prior to this. And you were talking about, they have a thought and it drops on the floor. And
Yeah.
we talk about faith, right? And people
Mm-hmm.
lack the faith in
Yep.
themselves.
In
And this
themselves. Yes.
and this is the problem, because we're putting our faith in things outside of us. And
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not saying that there isn't value in having faith in things outside of us, because again, we want to have faith. But if you don't
Yeah.
have faith in yourself, then you don't follow up on anything. And the only way to
Exactly.
have faith in yourself is to take action and then realize, oh, I landed on both feet and I'm okay.
Mm-hmm.
So when I had the children, and I was not in the most glorious of situations. I was with a man about 10 years younger than me. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just being honest. He was a flight
Yeah.
risk from the word go, but it just
Yeah.
went this way. And once I had the one, I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. I'm going to have another
Yeah.
one, understanding that I was carrying the weight of all this. He
Yes.
soon had proven to be what I had expected. Again, I don't want to drag him through the mud, but there was cheating and
Yeah.
there was money issue. There was all of that. And I wound up ending that relationship. So I have two young children, 1 and 2.
Mm-hmm.
I'm over 40. My mother, she's been in and out of my life all these years, and she was in my life-ish. So she was in New Jersey.
Yes.
I was in Florida. She'd come to visit. but I saw her. Now I can't, I always say you can't unsee grandma naked, right? Like I can't unsee her. So our relationship where there was a point in our 30s, because we had estrangement and then not estrangement, and then not estrangement. But during times of the non-estrangement, because I was in a darker place in my life, we connected because we aligned. As you said, the energies matched each other. But now I have these children and my life is filled with joy. And regardless of what it looks like as a circus around me, again, with the girl's birth father and other, dramatic aspects of my life, she could no longer relate to me and I could no longer relate to her. There was a complete dissonance in our relationship because I, again, could see her. So now I got my children. It looks like a train wreck, but I couldn't be any happier. My father, who I had been estranged from since at the very beginning, 14, we tried to reconcile around 18, but it didn't go anywhere. So I hadn't had a relationship with my father since I was 14 years old. And right after my 1-year-old's birthday, so now I got a 1-year-old and a 2-year-old. They're yummy. They were yummy. So I had these 2 babies, and out of nowhere, I get a letter from my father, who lived in Thailand most of the year and used to come home back to the States 3 months out of the year to see his doctors and his accountant and do whatever it is he had to do to remain an American. And he happened to have a condo that was probably like 5 miles from the school that I worked in for like 16 years, right? And I walk into school one morning and there's a letter. There's no stamp, there's nothing. So it was hand delivered from, I call him the legend of Joe Sardano, because in my head, who he was all those years is he was the memory of this 14-year-old girl. I didn't even know who he was other than this scary guy from when I was 14, a letter from him. And basically it was like, hi, Dana, this is your father. I'm in town for 2 weeks. I would love to see you, yada, 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 something about the logistics, you know what I mean, of when and where and how. And then he was like, not a day has gone by that I haven't thought about you. Love you. Wow. So now, I don't want to get weird, but he just showed up. My father passed, but I feel you. So he, it was interesting because I always carried so much fear, and I also carried the narrative of my mother all those years and the memory of this 14-year-old girl. But I had this thought. I'm like, well, he's got to be about 75 by now, like at the time. I'm like, why would I not see him? I'm a grown woman with my own life. There's nothing to fear. And if this man, if he had the courage to reach out to me after all of these years, then who am I to not be available to him? So I called him up. I invited him to my home. I remember I have this new cool house now because I had to buy it because of my dog. And I invite him to my home, and even my friends were like, "Are you going to let him meet your kids?" Because everybody knew the legend of Joe Sardano, I was like, of course. There's nothing can harm us now. Because remember, a lot of these things that we do, whether we realize it or not, if we peel them back far enough, they're all based in fear. If it's not based in love, it's based in fear, right? So I invite him over for lunch. He meets my children, but I made a commitment to myself when I was going to meet with him because I didn't know what I was getting. I hadn't seen this guy in 25 years. I would not talk about anything prior to the children being born, like anything before the last 5 years. Like I would only discuss present circumstances because I'm going to meet this guy after all this time to rehash something that happened in 1983. Made no sense. So he comes, he was on his best behavior, met the children. It was wonderful. And I also knew that he was going away. I knew that I was only meeting him. I wasn't considering building a relationship with him. I just, it was safe. It was like feeding a squirrel, right? It was safe. And he came, we had a nice time, and he left, and we wound up maintaining a relationship through phone calls and things like that. That was just for timeline. That was February of 2012, October of 2012. So we were 6 months later, 7 months later, I met my husband.
Wow.
who is, I could feel, oh my God, who is I call him my schmoopy. He is
Yeah.
the schmoopiest of all schmoopies. And I truly believe in my heart and soul that my ability to forgive my father and
Yes.
reconcile what I had carried all of those years and finally put it down. I
Yeah.
was able finally, after a decade in my 30s, and let's not even talk about my 20s. My 20s were a shit show too, but
Yeah.
my 30s of why can I meet a guy and why can I be happy and why can I settle down? And I met my husband, and we truly are living happily ever after, like without being too sappy. He's everything that I've ever wanted. I just don't misunderstand. Like I
Yeah.
want to like dig a hole and bury him in the backyard on the daily, but that's that's for us. That's how we get along. But he is truly everything that I ever could have wanted and deserved because I made that change. I made that
Yeah.
decision.
It takes work, and uh, I tell people personal development is not for the weak-hearted. The weak-hearted watch the ones that do the personal development, and you know, they'll, they're familiar with fear, and they want to stay there, as you state, because it's all governed by that. When you saw and met your father, you change your state, you change your perception of maybe something in there about men that was there.
Yeah.
And when that perception shifted, you gave permission for your husband to walk in, and he took the leading from that, because it is that energy, that calling of energy
Yep.
again, that he may have seen you because you were calling to that energy,
Yep.
and you draw him into your sphere, and a conversation began, or someone introduces you. It's really interesting. uh, Look at the distance, the proximity by which your father was living from your school, happenstance. I mean, that is an incredible thing. And what an opportunity that was given for you. And you took advantage of it, and you answered the question, why wouldn't I asking? And I tell people, you become a detective when you are in your personal development life, because you're personal developing until you die. And so when you're in that lifestyle, you're always asking questions. You're asking questions of everything because you're in a state of awareness. You're, why is this here at this time? What is the
Yeah.
lesson that I need to
Mm-hmm.
extract from this
Mm-hmm.
current situation, current person? That's what awareness brings you to in that life. And you live a life of investigation, and it becomes this beautiful thing, because as you stated, it's a walk of faith, and once you take that leap, you don't know where the heck it's going, but you know at this present time, I'm this step is right, is the right step. So you meet Mr. Right 6 months after this encounter with your dad, and Mr. Right walks in, and he began to say the right things, and you began to feel the gushiness coming out of you, and your guys are planning this wonderful life, Dana. And you, as a woman individual on this planet, you still got to go through your journey, you still got to walk through some stuff. Talk to me. As he enters in, the kids are rosy, it is all going, but I know inside of you, if you're still at that job, it's not all that
Yeah. Oh,
good.
we're not even close to over. Oh my God. Oh my God. So again,
Talk to me about that, because that dichotomy here, people think when we chase all these things that they program us to have, and I tell people the enemy of growth is normal. I hate that thing. People tell me I have to be normal. I'm like, what does that mean?
yeah,
And
yeah,
but that's what the stamp that they tell us that we need to be. And I've interviewed hundreds of people, and all of them, multimillionaires, actors, famous doctors, famous people I've interviewed, and all of them, they got millions, they got everything, and they're sad and depressed and want to kill themselves. So here you are. What is happening in your world as all of these changes began to come into your
Woo!
space, Dana?
Oh my goodness. So I got to tell you again, this is where the work begins. Now I've seen it, right? Now, again, the veil has been lifted, and I either decide that I want to live unhappily in this awareness or do something about it. So my husband comes in. Oh, and I do want to say about my job. I wasn't always unhappy in my job. I was aligned with my job because I was helping the children and I was fighting the man and all. But when I began to change and my job did not begin to change, I was like, oh, you suck too. Like my so I'm like, okay, all right. So now I know, and again, I joke, but I'm like, oh, all right, now my mother sucks. My job sucks. Like these things need to change because I'm no longer in alignment with them. So I meet my husband, and I really, because I had these two young children and I was really, really trying to break the cycle of abuse and neglect. And I was very aware of that. And I already was like behind the eight ball with it. Like I had already broken up with their father, like it was like a whole thing. And I didn't want my husband to just come rolling in. But when it's right, and I'm going to say this to any women, men or women, but I'm speaking to women as a woman who have heard the statement, oh, you know when you know, you just know. And that always pissed me off because if I never knew, how am I supposed to know what I know feels like? Like how much, you know what I mean? And I always got frustrated, but here's how you know. When it's so easy that you can't stop it. You just can't stop it. Like he came in, it was easy. It felt good, right? I call it our emotional guidance system. If you feel yuck, if there's any kind of ick or yuck, then do less of that. And if it feels good, it makes you happy, do more of that. You want a guide of where to go, just listen to your ick, the ick factor, right? So it felt good to be with Rob. So I spent more time with Rob. So in a very short amount of time, we got together in the fall. By January, we were building an addition on my house because I don't want to move my children from where I was. From the house that they were born in. So we came together, we built an addition on my house. And by June, he had moved into our home. And by that time, he had proposed to me. And then a year later, we got married. So we met in 2012, moved in by 2013. By 2014, we were married. Yeah. But in that time, with the girl's birth father, he had met somebody right around the same time. And I had, in the time we were, their birth father and me, in the time that we were split, I had forgiven him of all of his misgivings and was trying to keep him to be a part of their life because it was very important that they be with their father. So I paid for everything, all that stuff, brought him to Disney with us, whatever. He had a girlfriend, and we committed that the girlfriend and my husband, boyfriend at the time, would be on board sharing holidays together and sharing events and birthdays and things like that. So these children could grow up in sort of in a happy, cohesive home where all the adults got along, right? Well, that lasted about 3 months with the girlfriend, and she didn't like it, and he started acting like the fool, and then he pulled the abandonment thing where he was disappearing. I'm obviously going through this rather quickly. And then I finally set my boundary and put my foot down. I never asked for child support. I never asked for anything other than you just being a part of their life. Now you get a lawyer. Yeah. Long story short, fast forward, he didn't get a lawyer. He finally did get a lawyer. He didn't want to concede. He finally signed them over. He signed the paper. My husband adopted them in 2015, and we're all living happily ever after. In the midst of this happening, my job is starting to get quite uncomfortable. So now, and right before I married my husband, there's so much you asked. Oh my God, I'm trying to just give you the high points. There's so much.
You to give it all. Give it
all.
Oh
my God. But this is the work. This is the work. If you want the salacious details, get the book. But this is what happened. Folks. Yeah. So I'm engaged to my husband. We're going in. So we're in the spring of 2014. We get married in June 2014. I always see a calendar in my head. I don't know how you guys see it, but in June. My mother and I had a disagreement. Like, I don't even remember what it was about. It was like so benign. But for the first time in my life, I set a boundary. And the boundary was, Mom, you owe me an apology. And she got all weird about it, and we hung up the phone. I said, well, call me when you're ready to apologize. And that's when that war began. Not only did she not come to my shower, she didn't come to my wedding. She took the leash off my stepfather and brother, and they just, a barrage of just venom and ugliness. It's like they were all waiting. They were all waiting for permission to just go off on me. So they didn't come to my wedding, a wedding that I told my father I wasn't going to invite him to, and his brother, because I didn't want to create chaos at my wedding. Yeah. So I called my father, who's on the other side of the world. You know where he is, right? Or where he was on the other side of the world. And I said, I'm sorry I was wrong. I didn't give him any details. Sorry I was wrong. And he came to the wedding. My uncle and my cousins came to the wedding, and it was beautiful, and I have no regrets. So now I'm estranged from my mother again. Yeah. Okay. So I took out, again, did the work, made the difficult decisions, cut my mother out, sent my girl's birth father to get a lawyer. So that is clearing itself up. So now, because I have more self-worth, now I'm finally seeing myself through the eyes of this man who actually sees me, right? Yes. And I'm beginning to go, oh, I am relatively intelligent, and I am a beautiful person, and I don't suck. And, you know, and all of these things, all of these irrational belief systems that I carried because of my own personal trauma. And again, I know the story is long, but I swear to you, I'm only giving you the sound bites. So now I'm in my job. Yeah. I have these two small children because I was a career woman for years before I had the children, because I had them late in life. These two small children. I have this awesome man. I figure out I can paint, because somewhere around this time I pick up a paintbrush. And now I'm going to work every day going, oh my God, I hate it here. Why is my head of school, blah, blah, blah. And why do these people not get it? And well, nothing changed. I changed. But I was ignoring the tap on the shoulder. And then I got rheumatoid arthritis. I used to run every day and kickbox and do all this stuff. And now I'm becoming a prisoner in my own body. Yeah. So now I'm painting. I'm happy at home. I don't want to stay after school, till 7, 8 o'clock at night to meet with parents that don't want to hear what I have to say when I've got this beautiful family at home. And I'm becoming quite rebellious. Yeah. So at the end of 2016, a year and a half after I figured out I could paint, I self-sabotaged. I don't know if you're ready for the details, but I self-sabotaged. And the full punch to the you-know-what. And that's when I walked in 2017 and said, I can't do this anymore. And that's when. So we started at the end. We went back to the beginning. And now we're back to that place. It's like the movie Crash. I think that. Yeah,
I think that's life, though. I think that is growth. Growth is never a linear thing. Everyone think growth is a linear thing, and it is a perfect example when I utilize from time to time when a plane takes off to go on a trip from New York to Miami. It is not a straight line. The plane will go off all over the place or whatever. But that compass, that internal compass, will always keep you aligned. The plane will go all directions, drop air pockets, so all kind of dancing. But that compass, it is the instrument that brings it back into focus. And so the internal compass that is within us, once it's awoken, you can't put it back to sleep. And so it will always bring you back as all the turmoils that are happening around you. And a lot of it is designed. I use the word design, Dana, to get you to come to a place where you are about to walk this walk of faith. It is getting to a place where you're going to walk your spiritual walk from your spiritualness out to the natural versus from your natural walking around, because when you're walking around in a natural state, you're blind as a bat. You don't know nothing, to be honest with you. But when you're walking from your spiritual being, as you stated before, that uckiness or whatever, that thing is real. That thing is real. That sees where you are not able to see. And when you walk from that lifestyle, you have another sense that mankind is not aware of, that is at your disposal to guide you in all of this mess that is happening inside
Yeah,
of you.
Ken, speak it,
And so when you begin to focus and allow that compass now to guide you and to hook into that, all of this madness happening around you doesn't mean a thing. But the
Yeah,
others, what happen is the stuff that is outside becomes a part of the design to get you to go and find you and say to yourself, okay, I need to make a new agreement here in order to survive. And you are now going to make, and that's what I say when people start drifting off, is because they haven't made the agreement yet. You made that agreement, you ran to
yeah,
that principle and go, I'm done. Thank you.
yeah.
And once you did that, it now allows, again, you're going to release power with your words. And as you release the power, it will, I tell people, it will bring all the other people into your space and the situations into your space, Dana, because what did you release? You release energy. What are people? Energy housed within a body. Energy will pull energy that is necessary to get the job done. God said, I need light, give me light. And you and I are going to say, I need this, boom. And it comes around in a situation, and it'll take a little time because that those molecules, if you wish, began to formulate. And as they began to formulate and create this thing called sun and moon, it's formulating and creating a circumstances to bring those people into you, to bring it everything to pass. And I tell the people, we are creators, girl. We are some powerful stuff. And so here you are, Dana. You made your statement of faith. You are now going to your husband, recognizes the gift. He sees it. He knows it. He says, honey, if you're going to do this, we need to make a couple of adjustments. And you guys, you gave him the key. You said, let's make the adjustment. Talk to me here and walk us through as you made the adjustment there. How did the other things that you began to call upon begin to manifest in your life?
Whew. This is actually the stuff we're talking about now is the follow
Yeah.
up to the first book because I'm like, people
Yeah.
they got to see this in real time. You know what I mean? But I have a belief that, like you said, when you say it, when you declare that this is what I want or this is what I believe,
Yes.
right? And your
Mm-hmm.
energy does not belie that statement. Like when you say it and you believe it, the
Yep.
universe will somehow conspire to make it happen. I 100% believe
Fate,
that.
girl. That's what's called fate, man.
Yeah. But I also believe that there are opportunities. I call them the how bad do you want it opportunities. So,
Yeah.
for example, when I said I was going to leave my job and I was making six figures, just at six figures, but six figures,
Yeah.
I had a year because I went in August and said, okay, I'm giving you this school year and I'm walking out of here in the spring. Right. So
Yeah.
the fall of 2016, I'm walking out in the spring of June of 2017. But in that year, another administrator, another principal from another school that I had worked with years ago was opening a new private school of his own. And he approached me and said, he offered me a job. He offered me a job doing exactly what I was doing, moving to a city, pay for the move, pay for my place until we figured it out, and was going to pay me $175,000 a year to do this thing. And it was how bad do you want it? And I turned him down. And everybody else in my sphere of influence was like, what are you doing? You're turning this down for $0. And I'm like, I got to do what I have to do. And another thing that's interesting is when we moved, so again, we sold the house, bought the less expensive house. The moment we signed the mortgage, my husband then lost his six-figure job. So we went from a whole bunch of figures to zero figures. How bad do you want it? And I'm like, no, man, we got to stick with this. We got to stick with this. And so now we're in this situation where I have committed to my, I call it my soul's purpose, to what my heart, what my soul, what my guts are telling me to do. He is committed to supporting me because he sees something that I'm just beginning to see.
Yeah.
And I call them unicorns. Unicorns are these magical beings that I'm now aligning with that I couldn't see before, that weren't crossing my path before because I wasn't ready, right? And everybody I needed and everything I needed just showed up as I needed it. And it's mind blowing. It's like I created this. I was creating this event. This was when I was first started this path. I was creating this event, and I needed somebody. I needed a vegan chef. And then I'm like, and all of a sudden, this one knows this one, and boom, she's in my lap. I don't have to search for it. I needed somebody to help me create journals for this event, but that were like handmade. And this woman who does this for a living, who also just happened to live in my neighborhood, showed up. Like it's such an amazing thing, this thing that I call alignment, and it's everything that you're describing, like the particles of energy.
It takes time to bring them all to you.
Well, you don't get pregnant and then a baby plop on the floor. There's a gestation period, right? You need 9 months. You need to get all the pieces together, and then the baby shows up.
And that's what happens. And I tell people, it is all dependent on you. And you and your life is waiting on you to decide that you want what you want. And once you decide what you want, as you state, you'll see how people come from all over the place to bring it to pass because they were just waiting on you. They were on the outskirts there just waiting for you to release the words. I grew up in church, and so I usually, from time to time, I'll pull the situation out there. And you mentioned all these things happen to you. How bad do you want it? I remember a story where Jesus is walking on water. Peter says to him, "Can I come on that thing?" And he says, "Yeah, come on out. Hang out with me." So he jumps out of the boat and he begins to walk on water. And he's walking on water and he's stepped out by faith, just like you did. You stepped out by faith. And then the circumstances around Peter began to change. It began to get a little more interesting, as they say. The wind came and all the circumstances changed. That's the only thing that changed. He was walking on water. And so what happened with you was circumstances around you change. But Peter made one mistake. It says he looked around and he saw the circumstances. And then he panicked. And it says he began to sink. But you did not panic.
Oh,
well, the panic.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. There are moments.
But it didn't pull you out of the desire.
100%.
Peter took his eyes off of where he wanted and began to look around him. You did not. You said, "We made a commitment. I'm going for it. I don't know what it is going to look like, but we are not coming down." And that is the statement. You said, you've been saying it all night. There's a scripture in the Bible that says, "Decide a thing and it shall be established." But before you decide something, Dana, you have to declare it. It says, "Declare a thing and it shall be established" in the scriptures. But before you declare it, you got to decide it. You got to make it in your heart, and
you got to believe
it. And once you believe it, and that's why I tell people, the reason why you haven't moved is because you haven't found your statement of faith. You don't know what you want. And when you find out what you want, trust me, the people will come from every place because they're waiting for you. So here you are, Dana. You guys made the leap. You're walking by faith. I want you to tell me, how did you move from that place now, from the zero figures, to a place where you began to now produce produce the freedom by which you're able to create because that's a lot of pressure here, but you still have to have this freedom and belief within yourself to stay focused in order to progress. And how was that whole pressure? How did it begin to form you and your husband as you began to walk this journey?
In the simplest of terms, I learned through specific experiences, and there's just so many like minor things where I just keep proving that it's going to be okay.
It's going to be.
I learned that everything that I need, all of the resources that I need, will always be available to me if I am following my heart's desire. Again, whatever words you want to use, heart's desire, your bliss, your joy, your soul's purpose. But every time, excuse me, or the other people would stand in disbelief or whatever it is, I still knew. I can't explain it. It's the weirdest thing. Like, there was no sign of what do people say? You're never going to make a living doing that, right?
Yeah.
That always seems to be the common thread. And my joke would always be, do I look like I missed a meal? Like, who are you calling starving artists? But it goes hand in hand with the action. Now, the action should not be confused with the having to work. And the action is taking the inspired action. I did all the art festivals. I promoted in so many ways. I used to paint flamingos, like the plastic flamingos you put on people's lawns, and put eyelashes on them and name them, and glue fake flowers on them and write my website. And I would throw them on people's lawns. Like, I was doing everything. I used to go to the local artisan market and put up my tent and my walls and put up my art and just sit and paint and hand people cards. And then my friends would say, did you sell anything today? I'm like, you don't get it. You don't get it. I'm just doing what I love to do, and I'm just putting it out there. And so my ability to see the big picture and ignore the fear and know and believe and trust and have faith that if I truly, truly feel this way and truly, truly do the things that make me feel good and bring me joy and trust that I'll always have everything I need, it shows up. When you asked the question, I got the feeling that you were looking like more for specifics, but there's so many, and some of them are minute, and some of them, it happens.
You answered it. Yeah, you answered it. And talk to us now as you move from art into book. How did that come about? What was the catalyst that said, the situation that arose that said, I need to put this in a book? And how did you proceed to do that?
So we're in the spring of 2021. At this point, the gallery is about 2.5 years old. I am doing, it's not just an art gallery, it's an intuitive lounge. So I am doing intuitive guidance with people based on, I figured out how to take all of my skill set, right? I have an educational background. I am an intuitive. I am an artist. You know what I mean? So all of these things, and I'm doing intuitive guidance with people. And I'm always saying the same sort of thing over and over. You have your thing, the thing that you find you constantly say, and you have your cute little anecdote or your cute little comparison or whatever it is, right? And in 2021, all 4 of my husband and my 2 children, who are now 11 and 13 at the time, whatever, a year or so ago, we all got COVID. We all got COVID at the same time. We dropped like dominoes. Like, I was like a rhino with a tranquilizer dart. Like, I was the last one. I was like, I'm fine, But the 4 of us, boom, 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 and we're all in bed. So we're in bed for like a week. Like, you're really, really sick, right?
Yeah.
And then you have like the week after that where you're not well, you're not going anywhere, and you're kind of moving around. And then the next 2 weeks, you're just kind of getting back to yourself. So while I'm in bed, after the part where, I'm like, just please don't let me die. Like, after those first few days, I'm in bed and we're watching TV, whatever. And I'm getting this profundity drop into my head, like all these profound, like, ideas and thoughts based on the material that I would share with my intuitive guidance, but like in a really, because I was still long enough, right? I'm not doing a billion things and distracted by any kind of signs or whatever. And it's falling into my head and I'm thinking, this is really profound. And I would grab my phone and in my notes, because I wasn't getting up, obviously, but in my phone, I would write down what it was. And this kind of went on. And then when I felt a little bit better, I grabbed my notes and I'm like, let me organize this in the computer. So I'm like typing it and I realized I had these 10 really profound ideas that were all about empowerment. right? Because this is
Mm-hmm.
obviously what I'm teaching and what I'm working with people, right? All about empowerment. And so when I organized it, I'm like, let me do a little write-up. I'm probably going to wind up doing a lecture series or a workshop at the gallery or something like that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And all of a sudden I'm writing and I'm like, holy shit, I'm writing a book. And then I began spinning in my anecdotes and my personal experiences and context, like my life story for context. And it really wound up being, it's really, I mean, if I may say so myself, it's really a piece of art. It's really, really good. Like anybody that I know that has read it or has read it, even people I don't know who have contacted me, are like, this thing is life changing. It's because it's a how-to essentially.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's how I wound up writing the book. The second book came shortly after because it just wasn't stopping. I finished the first book and I'm like, oh my God. And then I chronicled, like I said, the spiritual journey of decoding the language of the metaphysical community, decoding the language of, again, like I said, alignment and frequency and manifestation and all of those words that if you're not in those circles is a little off-putting. And you said you're a man of faith, of Christian faith. So when you do is you go back and you quote, scriptures in the Bible. But what people don't realize is if you take those words and then you take the words of the metaphysical community and you then decode them and translate them, everybody's saying the same thing.
The same thing. It's the
I
same
don't write the news, I report it. It's all the same thing, right?
Yeah,
and so it's a beautiful thing what you're doing because you're making something that could, and I'm not just going to be candid, a turnoff to people who are not of the Christian faith, right?
Yeah.
And you're taking it and you're making it real and actionable and tangible. And I am taking something of the spiritual community that can be like, oh, they're off in the woods with their crystals under the moonlight, but it's all the same thing. So that's how that happened.
And I tell people that's how it's supposed to be. And we shouldn't negate each other. We should complement each other because we all have it from a different vantage point, if you will. And when you put them collectively, we create a beautiful picture. And we see
a tapestry.
All these things. Yes, we see it clearer. We see it with more understanding, and we are able to digest it more. And those that are able to look at it from these different things, everyone is able to speak to each other through that. Everyone that has been listening to this conversation, I want you guys to get in and buy Dana's books. She's coming with the second one, working on it, but the first one, you get that book because in it goes deeper and gets, as she mentioned earlier, the juicy stuff is in there. So guys, get her books, buy it, give it out as gifts and presents. We have holidays coming up so that you have friends and family that want to read some juicy stuff. You guys know how I feel about books. I tell people all the time, Dana, that a book houses the same power that the author is released into that energy.
100%.
And as you read it, it have the capability of jumping off of those pages, landing within your spirit, and create a brand new, powerful you.
Thank you.
And I want you guys to get into Dana's space, get on her site. And I'm going to remind her that she needs to make an announcement.
Thank you.
She has some stuff coming up, and I want you guys to hear about it so that you can partake of it. Dana, go ahead.
Oh, Ken, you're a good man. So one of the things that I hadn't mentioned in any of this is I am my dear friend from college. We reunited 30 years later. Again, by happenstance. She is the brilliance and the brainchild behind this platform. It's called Uniquely You, but the platform is called Find Uniquely You as the letter.com. So it's Find Uniquely You. And the whole purpose of this platform is to create a community. You know, you're talking about how we're singular, right, Ken? You're saying we're singular. We all have our own experience. We all put our own flavor and our own stink on it, but we are essentially all in this together. You know, my gallery is called Ubuntu Fish Gallery because Ubuntu covers that same concept, I can't be
Yes.
well, happy, and whole unless we're all well, happy, and whole. Boom, too. Okay.
Yes.
So she has created this platform for people who have a passion, who have something to share. They don't have to have 85 different certifications, because we do have a training process that I am in charge of running to help people who have something to teach. And I already got my eye on you, Ken, for the next round of you instructors, by the way. But to teach their subject matter, and it's all about, there's 7 different schools in this one platform: School of Empowerment, School of Metaphysics, It Takes a Village, which is for the children, the School of Pharmacy with an F, and it's about anything like nutrition and plant-based and integrative wellness, School of Creative Expression, the Kitchen Sink School for anything that doesn't fall into these other schools, and I'm pretty sure, the School of Thrivelihood, because it's about people who want to take the leap from their traditional career path, but they may have the goods, but they don't really know what to do with it. They don't have a husband that's like, sure, quit your job, and it helps with, moving people in that direction. So on this platform, it's not just about like workshops, because they're live. Again, it's about creating the community. It's about people sharing what they have. And then those that aren't yet ready, they haven't gotten to that point where they're ready to share, but they're ready to learn and grow and expand and peek behind the curtain and step into that next phase, and may not know yet what to do or how to do it, but will then be faced with people who are doing such a thing. So on the platform, I do have, other, administrative roles, but I am also a U instructor, and I'm also teaching courses. I'm teaching courses based on the 10 Recommandments for Personal Empowerment. I have a longer course that is of the entire book. So it's like a 4-week course, and really help people identify what it is they need to shift, what it is, what belief system they need to reverse, and walk them through how to get it in this. Evolve, connect in this way. Ken, you're gone, Ken. So I assume that I'm still on the mic, so I'm going to continue to share. So I teach these workshops for 10 Recs on the. Oh, he's back.
We got you.
He's
Don't
coming.
worry about it.
Yay! So I don't know if you heard me. I'm like,
I heard
like
you.
juggling. I'm like, okay. So I'm teaching these courses on this platform. So for people who have read the book and want to delve in further, you're meeting with the author in order to do that. So here's the cool event that I wanted to share. So because Find Uniquely You is a bit of a nebulous topic for a lot of people, because it's like, yeah, come join us, take classes, teach classes, and you'll feel good. Hey, we're creating a community. Like and again, nobody's reinventing the wheel. Yes, there's a Facebook, and yes, there are online classes being taught, but this is really for the people who are ready to live in a better place here and here, to make these changes in their life. We're just like-minded people doing this. So on October 1st, I guess it's in like 2 weeks from now, on October 1st, we are creating an open house, which is an all-day event. It's like 6 hours, and it's in 2-hour blocks. And it's really inexpensive. The tickets are inexpensive. They're $8.62. We have an angel book, Angela, the founder, that when you pull the number and like whatever it says, it's like 1 to 1,000. So we're like, $862. So it's $8. You'll see those kind of events that we do. They're like, we have another one that's like $7.42 because we think we're cute, if I'm being honest. So this event will showcase what some of our you instructors are doing. Like there's round robins with you instructors. I'm actually doing a 30-minute event where I talk about 10 recs and, we do a little like mini workshop. There's a Reiki share. Somebody's doing a Reiki share. There's also Angela, again, the founder. I'm the co-founder of this platform. We are in the beginning stages of creating, or we have actually already started creating our own show that you may join us at some point. It's called Cuddle Talk. I would love to. And we call it Cuddle Talk because the requirements are you can't be sitting at your desk. You have to be wearing your comfortable sleepwear. You can bring a blankie. You can bring a stuffy, your little sockies. We have a segment called What's in Your Cup? And it's really to disarm people so we could just chill out, be our truest versions of ourselves and have these kind of conversations. So we're going to do a little segment of Cuddle Talk, and anybody who is signed up at that time will join us and be our guests on Cuddle Talk. So just again, to bring some clarity to it. It's October 1st. It's 6 hours in 2-hour segments. The ticket is $8.62. But if you buy that ticket, you don't have to come for the whole day because we all have lives. That's why we purposely created these segments. So if you're available at 1, you come at 1. If you're available at 9 or something interesting, you come at 9. But the schedule, like when you go on the website, this is my sign for website, by the way. But when you go on the website, it'll tell you, what everything is there. I'm just giving you the long and the short, if you will. But please, please, please join us. If any of this speaks to you and you're like, it's an inexpensive way to peek behind the curtain and see who we are and what we're doing. And again, get a taste of 10 recs, with the author herself, if that interests you.
Excellent. I love this conversation. Dana, thank you so much for coming to Threads of Enlightenment. Everyone, I'm going to be there. I think I'm going to do my best to be there. Get
on it, Ken! You're now committed. We're like engaged at this point.
I know.
We just spoke for an hour and 15 minutes.
I'm going to have to find my time and my location. So
I'm for sure.
In there and where I could sneak in. But I definitely want to be there and support you guys. Thank you so much for coming here to Threads of Enlightenment and spending such quality time with us and just bringing joy into this conversation. Dana, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. What a pleasure, Ken. I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome.